Tonight we're a part of a mass blanket exercise, and there are events that are happening across Canada and every capital city to mark the one-year anniversary of the release of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission report.
And to summarize, what is the blanket exercise? What does it do? It's its purpose?
The blanket exercise is a 2-hour interactive workshop that takes participants through Canadian history from an Indigenous perspective.
What do you hope participants will come away with tonight after having taken part in the blanket exercise?
I think a lot of Canadians have a certain version of their history that they've been told in schools, and this provides an alternate parallel history from a different perspective, and hopefully it connects their hearts to the cause of reconciliation.
Do blanket exercises ever happen at any other time or in other places?
Yeah, absolutely. We offer blanket exercises on a regular basis to the public, anyone interested in learning more about Indigenous history.
Great. Is there anything else that you'd like viewers to know?
I think it's important that everyone connects with reconciliation in their own way, thinking about how they can interact and build stronger relationships with all people in the community on a day-to-day basis through their activities and their interactions.
Right.
Feel free to mingle, meet each other, trade your items. You represent the Indigenous peoples, the peoples who were here for at least 10,000 years. Long before the arrival of the Europeans, Turtle Island was your home, and home to millions of people like you. You lived in hundreds of nations, you fished and hunted and farmed. Each community had its own language, culture, traditions, laws, and governments. As communities, you worked together and cooperated with one another. Like all people, sometimes there was conflict, but before the newcomers arrived, one of the ways the original peoples ended disputes was by making treaties.
The land is very important to you. All of your needs, food, clothing, shelter, culture, your spirituality are taken care of by the land, which is represented here by the blankets. In return, you take very seriously your responsibility to take care of the land.
Respecting yourself is one of the most important things my culture has taught me. Also, the land, water, plants, air, and animals are all very important to our culture and need to be respected. Without any of it, what would we be?
Without even consulting you, we made deals amongst ourselves and divided up control over you and your lands. Usually, whichever nation discovered your land first took control with the blessing of the Christian Church. This practice is now called the doctrine of discovery.
For them, land was something that could be bought and sold, and treaties were a way of getting you, the Indigenous peoples, to give up your land.
After a while, you didn't get along very well with the Europeans. When the War of 1812 ended, the Europeans no longer needed you to help them with the fighting. As the fur trade dried up, the European newcomers turned more and more to farming and started looking for more land.
For those who were touched by the blanket, the settler was carried, or if you were the person who was given it as a gift, please step off the blankets. You represent the many Indigenous people who died from smallpox after having come into contact with such blankets.
Anyone with a white index card? Raise your hand. Please step off the blankets and take a seat. You represent those who died of various diseases.
You represent the First Nations that were divided when the border between the United States and British Canada was created. This border divides communities and cuts you off from each other.
Construction of the railway opened up the prairies to settlers. Land was needed for farming, and the government of Canada bought a huge piece of land from the Hudson's Bay Company. This was very hard for some of you who are already living there, such as the Métis and the Cree. You, the Métis, fought hard for your land during the Red River Rebellion and Northwest Resistance. You won some of these battles, but in the end, you were defeated by the government soldiers. You, in the West, represent those Métis leaders who died in battle, were put to jail, or were executed. The settlers will have one blanket full of people leave the exercise to represent this.
A large number of infected individuals passed away from the disease. Currently, the rate of TB among the Inuit is 185 times higher than for Canadian-born non-Aboriginal people.
You in the North, you represent people like the Inuit and the Innu at Davis Inlet, along with many other Indigenous communities who suffered and sometimes died because you were forced to move to an unfamiliar place. The settlers will move 2 of your blankets away from the others.
Those of you with blue cards, please step off the blankets. You represent those who died of hunger after being forced off your original land and away from your traditional hunting grounds.
As more of us arrived, we needed more land. Many of us as Europeans thought we were better than other kinds of people, including you. Soon we didn't think of you as friends and partners, but as a problem to be solved. We started ignoring or changing our laws to make it easier for us to take your land. Some land was taken in war. Some land was taken after you died.
Civilized peoples, or lands not being put to civilized use. It was us who decided what it meant to be civilized. And we decided that because you and your people were not using the land in a civilized way, we could take it, and it was almost impossible to stop us.
You will now be placed on reserves. Please fold your blankets until they're just large enough to stand on.
You went from being strong, independent First Nations with your own government to isolated and poor bands that depended on the government for almost everything. You were treated like you knew nothing and like you couldn't run your own lives. You became the responsibility of the federal government. Through the Indian Act, the federal government continues to this day to deny you your basic rights. These rights are things that most Canadians take for granted, such as healthy schools, proper housing, and clean running water.
Also, you may not leave your reserve without a permit. You may not vote. You may not get together to talk about your rights. You may not practice your spirituality or your traditional forms of government. If you do any of these things, you may be put in jail.
Those of you who are being asked to leave your blanket by the settlers, you were enfranchised. You're a First Nations teacher, lawyer, doctor, or veteran, so you've lost your Indian status and have left your community.
You must now move to the blankets representing the residential school. You represent those who were taken out of your communities and placed in residential schools far from your homes.
Represent some of the thousands of children who died at the schools or who died later as a result of your experience. Everyone else with yellow cards, please find a spot nearby, but not on the blankets. You represent those whose connection to your family and community was broken, and you never made it home. Some of you ended up in urban centers. Others ended up incarcerated due to your experience at residential school.
Children from rich and vibrant cultures and traditions, and we apologize for having done this. Not only did you suffer these abuses as children, But as you became parents, you were powerless to protect your own children from suffering the same experience. And for this, we are sorry.
But apologizing means you have to change what you're doing. Many people are still waiting to see if Canada will change how it treats Indigenous children. The residential schools are not just part of our history. Children and grandchildren of the people who went to these schools feel the impacts. Many former students are alive today, and some have had a chance to tell their story to Canadians through the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. But Indigenous children are still being treated differently. Your schools don't get as much money, and today you're even more likely to be taken away from your communities, but this time it's being placed in foster care.
Those of you who have just been asked to leave your blankets, you represent a child apprehended from your community during the 60s scoop. You were not able to reintegrate into your extended family and territory, leaving you with a sense of loss.
For many of us, women are the carriers of culture. By targeting women, you target the heart of a nation. Indigenous women have been targeted through federal legislation and policies that try to wear down our communities, and in doing so, to make it easier to take our lands. Residential schools have left a legacy of violence that continues directly to abuse, especially abuse directed at women and children. And in the wider society, everyday racism causes wounds that are both visible and invisible. Indigenous women are at least 3.5 times as likely to experience violence as non-Indigenous women in Canada. And over 1,000 Indigenous women have gone missing or have been murdered since the 1970s. And these are only the cases that have been documented. The real number is certainly much higher.
All across Canada, the relationship between Indigenous peoples and the newcomers is broken. We don't need more broken promises. We need to repair the relationship, and to do this, we need real change. We have lots of children, youth, and adults, and elders here to inspire us. Let's join our efforts together.